will bring their recommendations to the
Right,
planning
I
board.
think what we're concerned with is that it's great, but we want to make sure that there's actually actionable recommendations that are followed, because all of our resources are going to be going into this. I mean, in a sense, this is an effort on the part of the town, right? So it should hold water. So that's what we're concerned with. So how can we make that, put that mechanism in place in a legitimate way?
Well,
You want to speak?
yeah, I would like the public's at least comments specifically on, because what a traffic study usually entails is, by a developer, is they look at the current traffic at AM and PM peak hours, when the peaks usually occur at intersections. This particular consultant, who's
From
a very
Albany.
really quality firm from Albany that does a lot of traffic planning throughout the state and for the county. So they're a quality firm that did the work. The study was limited to looking at what happens over the next few years with or without the project, and what happens at two key intersections. They looked at two key intersections, Wall Street and 28 and Cedar Street and 375. And they looked at, with this project, what's the level of service at those intersections? How is it impacted by this project?
I think it was all computer modeling, actually. They weren't actually there. They were not
count.
there.
They didn't
It
count
was a
stuff.
computer program.
Well,
They also took,
They followed proper
they used
methodology.
information
Question
from
is
when
the
the school
scope.
was in, when the
Yeah,
school
they-
existed.
They
Traffic
based it on
count.
previous information that when the school was actually in session, that's what they used.
And it was inaccurate
they compared
information.
to when the school,
And it
when the
was
school was
completely
active,
inaccurate.
and then they compared existing conditions and then the proposed conditions if they're project.
But
Did
the
you look
planning
at
board
that? Did
even
you look at
said that it was not accurate. The planning board itself said it was not
Well,
accurate,
I'm just
okay?
interested in what scope of additional analysis you folks would expect from, whether you want to see weekend
Yes,
counts.
yes.
And accurate from when the school was in session. That was not accurate. Did you read that report? It was totally
Well, they
inaccurate.
use standard ITE traffic generation numbers for apartment complex and for school.
So there were 795 trips when the school was in session.
That's what
8
ITE
school buses and 24 teachers and 2 administrators. You're going to tell me there were 795 trips a day? That does not make sense, sir. I'm sorry.
It doesn't
That's
make
I'm
inaccurate.
not defending it, I'm just saying what happened.
Sounds like you're defending it.
What
You're saying it was
happened
very
to the
good
school 15 years ago.
report.
No, I'm saying they followed the Institute of Transportation Engineers book that gives traffic generation numbers for every use. They didn't come and count the West Hurley School when it was open 15, 20 years ago.
I think you gotta give it a chance to.
But what I'm interested in, what additional traffic data you want collected. So-
accurate information.
Like if there's a fire or someone needs an ambulance, how about that?
To me, this speaks to the need for workshops instead of just surveys. I think it would be great, because we don't want to throw this down into a black hole talking about the traffic right now, but it's clearly one really major issue. So instead of just having a survey, what about having some kind of workshop where we're actually all working this out? Because it's a great idea to actually get public input and see, is this traffic study being done right? But there's still a lot of questions.
I mean, the town of East Opus did a very inclusive process.
Yes, they did.
Where there were Saturday sessions, community members came, they had lunch, there were visioning boards, and everybody had the opportunity to really voice their say.
So,
And
I
would like to see an
know
inclusive
exactly what
process.
you're talking about, and that's something that took over 18 months. That was a full comprehensive review. So I know what you're talking about. I spoke with them, I've sat with them.
I was part
We're
of it,
actually going
actually,
to, we've
so-
actually are sitting and potentially going to be looking at how they progress and what they
You
did.
can ask Melinda, because she was actually on it.
So no, but I know that it was over in a year process, but that was a
Yeah.
full comprehensive plan. Right now, this particular situation is for the moratorium and the moratorium only. It doesn't necessarily pertain to this development, that development, it pertains to the town as a whole. In the traffic study for this development doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to address this moratorium for the multifamily complex. What you're referring to though, is something that has to come in front of the planning board, and it should be addressed, and I fully agree. So, but as far as the moratorium and the multifamily complex and multifamily dwellings, that is really what this informational meeting is about, to bring to life what exactly we're trying to do as a tool
Okay.
to make sure the residents are, comfortable with what we're trying to do.
It should apply to this particular instance as well.
Well, the traffic study will, and I mean, we can definitely look into, in enhancing that, and we can talk, we can
The
talk to
weekends
CAC and
and-
sit. So listen, so we have the comprehensive review committee meetings, we have the CAC meetings, so as of right now, you're looking at roughly 3 meetings a month, that potentially your voices can be heard during those meetings, you can bring these forward, and we would gladly then, move.
Can you announce when those meetings are?
They're on the
Board
website,
doesn't
I
let
mean,
us-
They're on the website.
it's on the website.
There's no public input during planning board.
So,
I didn't say planning board, I said CAC and the comprehensive review committee.
Why not do a very formal survey for input? I mean, it's kind of chaotic to.
As a whole, we made that statement, we are going to do that, for the comprehensive. But for right now, we really have to address the multifamily complex, multifamily dwelling. So, I'll go ahead and think, I'm sorry.
You asked for some specific recommendations, take back for traffic. I do think the width of the small roads here needs to be addressed, not just intersections, that there are no sidewalks, that there are no lights. So safety of people with
Width of
carriages
roads,
and dogs
illumination.
walking. Those are other things that have to include when you're looking at traffic.
And a lot of,
that's what we're looking for.
Dennis, were you aware that they also trucked in water when the school was operational? They had to bring in water trucks? That was what I was told today by a
that
school
was
board
during
member.
the contamination period.
I've not heard that.
That wasn't based on a well shortage, it was based on contamination. Do you know that for a fact?
I was just told today that they had a truck in water, so.
My kids were there at that time.
Yeah.
And they did, it was because of the contamination
Correct.
on 375 and 28.
Right, which potentially.
Susan Holden? Susan Holden still there? Cindy? Yeah.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Joanne, for coming. You've really shed a lot of light on the CAC and what's been going on there. And I think it's a great idea to test our water and have more information. However, as we've said, some people have sanitary caps, they can't have it done. I'm somebody who doesn't, and I got a letter saying that if I want to participate, I have to sign off that Dannenberg and Miller have no responsibility, and that if anything happens to my well, it's on me, I guess, as a taxpayer, and that I'm not okay with. I need some protection. If you want me to participate, I need some protection from the town, or Dannenberg, or somebody that's gonna say, we have your back, and right now I don't. I'm also hearing that there could be a different way to test through piezometers, which has nothing to do with anybody's well. They just dig a hole and put some tubing down and monitors and whatever. So I'm wondering if that's a possibility.
Well, that's a possibility, but that won't necessarily tell you what the impact on your well is,
Okay.
unless they drill to the same depth, hit the same seam of the rock as your well. So, it would be collecting other data that might be useful, but it wouldn't necessarily conclude what the impact on your well is from the drawdown at the West Hurley School well, which is
Yeah.
really what I think the planning board, the lead agency would seek, or what we want to know. You know, that it's not going to have a significant impact on neighbors' water supply. So piezometers are used usually in unconsolidated, non-bedrock areas to, generally more useful in that setting. But when you've got bedrock wells all over at different depths, it's best to get probes in the wells themselves.
But if we don't have wells that fit the bill and we're being put on the spot to take a risk, then maybe it is a
Yeah.
possibility.
What's your address, ma'am?
31 John.
So Cindy, I did refer, that's one of the reasons why Solaris has the information for you. So I did bring that up to him as far as the piezo metering. So, but potentially there are some, with the surveys that we received, some of those wells are 60 feet. I mean, potentially we could request that those ones that are 60 feet,
Yeah,
right? So we'll continue to look into that, and I'll bring up those surveys, and I'll look into the wells that potentially fit that criteria.
How would you know how
But
to
there was
treat
one
your
other
well?
question that was put out there, and I think the legal,
Liability. You say something?
Yeah, I can address that. I can just tell you personally that I cannot give you legal advice as to your situation. And, you know, if you are seeking, you know, legal advice, I can tell you how I interpret it for the town, because he did provide me with that after your complaint. The specific wording, you know, this form does not say anything about a release, a waiver, anything like that. So it's either very poorly drafted and they're looking to limit their liability, but my advice to the town, and basically is based on the way it's drafted, that it would not limit your legal rights should you bring a lawsuit. It's basically, the wording also further basically states that I understand that neither Cedar or Miller Hydraulic will accept responsibility. It's not saying that you are waiving that.
Right,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, I'm not
But
gonna hire a, I don't
I
have to
know,
hire an engineer
I
or
get it.
lawyer
I'm
and
just
money
telling
for
you,
lawyers.
the town asked me for my legal
The town
opinion
would then
and
have to
about the
support me if I'm doing
enforceability,
this for
whether
the
this
town.
is limiting these people's liability. And my opinion to the town is that it's not. But what I'm saying is, if you want, you know, a professional legal opinion that applies directly to yourself, I can't give you that.
Okay.
I can give you
So
a
let me ask you a
opinion,
question.
which is that it's an intimidation clause.
So let me ask you a question. Based on our, so based on the fact that they have an application in front of the planning board, is it, we can request escrow?
The planning board.
The planning board did.
Yeah.
So potentially,
It's something that the planning board can discuss at the next
okay,
meeting.
so, Alan's not here, but,
But yeah, Al,
potentially we will, address it. Maybe we can utilize some of the escrows.
But you want to be really careful about that, because
I want to be careful all over the place.
who knows what, could turn up. And-
Correct. Potentially maybe the escrows could be utilized for those services. Mr. Doyle? Mr. Doyle?
I wasn't going to mention anything, I thought that was a sign-in sheet. But 2 points. If the water was contaminated at the school, as it was, because my children went there as well, and the water was trucked in, what's going to change that's going to be able to provide good water for this development? That's my question. My comment is that last week, we went to the rail trail opening on Saturday. And when we went to leave, we noticed that there's a no left turn sign there, which makes sense. However, a real problem was created because everyone that had to go left, including us, pulled on the 28, got in the left lane, and was turning into Salvucci's to go west on 28. That is a real hazard, and that's only with the rail trail. What's going to happen with all the people that are going to be in this development that are going to be making left turns onto 28 across that 4-lane highway? So again, the traffic study is a real problem. And I realize there's going to be more trailheads open for the rail trail, but I think it's still an issue that we've got people that have to go left out of there, making a right, making a U-turn in Salvucci's, and then heading west on 28.
Go to Stewart.
Make a joke hand.
Make the jug handle and go around, wait at the light.
Well, I understand that, but it's a difficult process.
We understand the issue.
Safe way of doing
It
it.
is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Don. John Spindler, apologize for getting.
I'm studying too, but I just wanted to have like an understanding, because you said that they change from apartments to condos, and I just wanted to hear more of the details of what that entails. Is there gonna be like 20 less apartments versus condos?
What they said was it was gonna be the same 46 one-bedroom condos, and it does make a difference that it's going from apartments to condos. They're not gonna be without money, they're going to look for the most money, and the people who buy, what's gonna prevent people doing Airbnbs with that? So if you're looking to not change the culture of the town, I think a lot of those people will be using it for Airbnbs.
Sure,
And
because
that might be something to
there's unlikely to be a market for 46 efficiency apartments.
Exactly.
Are you
At high rate.
Phil, Simon, you have something to say?
No, I can sign in.
Dorothy? Puglisi? Puglisi? No?
I think we all were signing in and
Yes.
not necessarily.
Kathy Merritt? Lynn Bailey? Signing in? Speak up.
I'm gonna go say a few things. To her point, the CAC should have, some legislative function to be able to veto things so that their opinions would carry more weight, not just advising planning. Because my experience is that they don't always listen. But they do listen to Mr. Sorensen, even when he whispers, and strongly makes an opinion about something. Now, I don't know if he's the only guy in town, and I know that he advises a few other towns, but maybe a little variety in who we hire as a planning consultant. Because I think, he feels that his job is to shepherd projects through the process. And, it needs a more critical eye than he seems to give to the process. Water is an issue townwide. Obviously, you want to get some pertinent information for this particular project. And I'm sure as you continue to study that you will include residents of other parts of the town. Because we do have residents on East Hurley who run out of water as well. Quite a few, actually.
Oh, hold on one second. You want to address that? I mean, we're doing a full study. No, as far as the CAC, I mean, we are doing a full
Oh, yes,
study.
we are going to do, surveys are going to go out, well, we'll redo the surveys.
Townwide.
But we're gonna do that townwide, and that's for the eventual complete
Full.
town comprehensive plan.
Now, it's been suggested that there is already in existence a full comprehensive plan for the town. Where is it? Because all I have on
It's
the
on the
website is a bunch of goals, recommendations, and next steps. Does it actually exist, or is that it?
That's it, on the website.
Because this is not really a plan of any kind.
Well, that's why we're reviewing it and enhancing it.
You know, what Sorensen refers to, this does not conflict with the comprehensive town plan. I'm like, what is he referring to? Because there's really nothing here that's a comprehensive town plan, but it's a lot of recommendations to make a comprehensive town plan.
There is a comprehensive town plan. It is on the website. I've looked at it. Well, I don't know if that's, I can't really see.
If you could take a look, I appreciate it. I'd like to find it and read it.
It's on the website, there are all the individual chapters, everything is on there.
I just see it, it's okay, because I could just find the table of contents, perhaps
Oh, okay.
regarding that
No, it's there.
later. The traffic studies, yeah, we were subject to a traffic study as well when they used the ITE report from the 90s, actually. It wasn't even a current report. And, I get that they use, typical, this is usually the occurrence, so we're just going to use this table. And I really do think that the town should escrow and do their own studies, because you have the developer hiring their selected engineers, and they have a big bias towards the developer rather than towards the townspeople. And the only way that you can get away from that is to pay for an independent study. We feel that the traffic study report that was done down by Twin Lakes is totally inadequate as well. That it doesn't really take into effect all the trips that will be coming and going, because it's not a self-contained resort. So I strongly support that kind of a change happening with the town. And I know that you're going to also be looking at the Airbnb issue on everybody's behalf. A lot of the towns are working on that, and there might be some model legislation, to look at in some of the other towns. This is obviously a big concern, especially with a place like that. Corporate owners, totally absent people from, from that particular unit, housing unit. So you know, maybe that should be part of this entire process as well,
Short-term rentals.
the short-term rentals.
I have,
And I'm
I
not
have,
saying
I
it
have
shouldn't
short-term rent,
exist, but.
I have a draft.
Yeah.
I have not presented it. I'd like to, you know, finish up with our moratorium, make sure that all the areas in which the studies are being done, if I have to enhance regulations. But yes, I have a draft. It's one of the things that I'm just holding off on until we can go a little further with moratorium and make sure that our multifamily complexes are in place with the studies that potentially the CAC is doing. But yes, I do have a draft already, ready to go.
Okay,
Based on
great.
it.
So, yeah, I'm sure a lot of us are anxious to do
And
that as well. And what exactly are the next dates for the comprehensive planning board is meeting? You have those down?
Sure. October 28th is the next.
Town
November
board
12th.
meeting?
Sorry, October 28th, November 12th, and November, excuse me one second,
26th?
25th or 26th, I don't know, hold on one second. All these are at 6 o'clock at the town hall, and,
Is there public input at those meetings?
yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, we have residents that have signed, that have, you know, that have stepped up. Not everybody comes, but we're, it's, you know,
But people can talk.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. Okay, October 28th, November 12th and 25th, and December 9th.
25th.
Yeah. And December 9th.
Any others here? Any other meetings?
No, not for this, no, not for the comprehensive review. But I heard last time in our meeting, and the public hearing that we would have for this, I would gladly have here. So, you know, so when we get something in the process of to present to the public as a whole, something more or less completed for your review and for your approval, we'll bring it here. I would gladly do that.
And I want to thank again the committee members for their time. I mean, this was a lot to do in a short period of time to get us to this point, and thank you for that.
I apologize. This, Jasper? Third Jasper. Susan Roth. Oh boy. I think the last name is Lugo. Lugo? No? Moriello is just signing in. Benjamin Serrano, and Cheryl.
Yes, thank you. I was at that board meeting when it was Paul Economos who incorrectly was not allowed to vote or anything because he did not live in our town. And Dannenberg's, whatever, were there. They talked about, Paul didn't know they were on the moratorium, which we had explained to him that he was. And they did talk about Mr. Miller doing the water study. And I have a problem with that. And I just found out now he's doing it now. According to, I thought the planning board wanted an independent study and not done by Mr. Miller, who has done the new well and the study before this. And that to me is not independent. That to me is somebody who Mr. Dannenberg is using. And I know from one of the planning board meetings that Mr. Bruckner told Dannenberg's lawyer or something that keep putting money in your escrow account. So I know there is an escrow account because the Mr. Bruckner, yes. Mr. Bruckner made a comment about that. And since I do live right by the school, and I do have a sanitary cap, you cannot do my well. But I have a very big problem about that, because I do not trust Mr. Miller. I don't care how wonderful he is, but he's still under Dannenberg's rule. And I want to know if there's going to be somebody that this, John mentioned it independently, but he had to be quiet about it because of whatever, the gag order. But I want to know if there's going to be somebody else doing the water testing. I cannot be into it because of my well, and that no one's going to touch my well. But I want to know, because this to me is a very big problem. I live right there. It's my backyard. And I do not trust Mr. Miller. I don't care how reputable he is, but he's still being paid by Dannenberg. Now, if there is money in escrow, why don't we get somebody to do it? I know there's plenty of very good water people here that we can get done. And your survey you sent out to us? Are you kidding? Joan, I thought you were going to put out a water survey.
Well, basically, we decided we had to get it out quickly, so we did those 5
But
questions.
asking me how deep my well is, if it's cloudy, it could be cloudy tomorrow. He's doing a water test. Is he doing the water testing now? Which nobody knew. I did.
My understanding is he is not doing any
Who?
pulling of anything.
Nate lives right there.
There's a hose running right now. You can walk over and hear the water running into the swamp.
Somebody was just in there tonight.
Somebody was in there
He's
tonight.
pumping out of his well into something?
Into the swamp.
That's
So
how
if
we
he's
got
doing that,
tested.
you're asking me if my water's cloudy. It could be cloudy when I get home.
Okay, but this is basically, I think, a planning board issue. You have to, I guess they have to be approached. Because we can't make that, because
There's no public input at the planning board meetings. They do not let us talk.
Can't ask
Even
questions.
at the end.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah,
public comment period.
Let me just say, and I'll put this project aside, I do a lot of planning board work in 7 or 8 municipalities. And 99% of the projects, the applicant has to hire their own experts. And they also have to escrow money to the town that's receiving their application, so the town can hire essentially third-party experts to review the work of the applicant's experts. So that's 99% of the time how it works. That's the check and balance. You're proposing something different where they would escrow and the town would hire everybody to do, you know, the work at ground zero. That's not usually done, but
Well,
we can
something
talk about
has
it.
to be
Community
done.
group can do it, correct?
Oh, sure.
Community group to get there. to do it.
But something has to be done because if he's doing it now and nobody knows about it, it could be affecting my well right now. And you can't test my well. So it could be, I can lose
Let me ask something.
my husband.
They have 2 pitless wells on the property. Can't they monitor one well while they're pumping the other?
That's part of their work plan, yes.
Okay, I didn't know if that was included.
The work plan is to do with a 72-hour test on the old well
Yeah.
while monitoring the new well. They already did a 72-hour pump test on the new well and monitored the old well.
What's the 72 hours?
But they have to do other things as well in their work plan. And it was hopeful that they would be able to monitor some neighbors' wells at the same time.
But he knew he couldn't because he came around with a letter. The first time he was doing it, he knocked on doors. Please, he knocked on my door, please.
Cheryl,
No, leave me.
I wanted to state something. A lot of these houses have older wells, okay? A lot of them been re-drilled because we had a drought, or more than once. So the other issue is, you go to survey people in the area, we have a lot of new people that live here that don't know about these existing problems we've had 20, 30 years ago.
Sure.
Okay?
He's
So
lived here all
your,
his life.
your survey is not gonna be that accurate either, because you have a lot of new people in this area that don't know what's going on.
He's lived here all his life. He lived in the house he grew up in.
It's,
Cheryl, do you have
it's a
anything
lot
other
of
than an
things you
independent
have
study
to
that you're?
figure out.
Do you have anything other than an independent study that you'd like to have incorporated?
Well, a lot of things, but I don't think you want to, you know, I really don't want him in my backyard either, but that's a big thing too. No, but I'm very worried about it. I'm worried about my well. Because you can't monitor it, and you're asking me, is it cloudy? Well, it could be cloudy today. We have filters on our wells. Maybe my filter was clogged. You know, we had our water monitored for how long? How many years? 3 years because of the spill?
Because of the school.
Because of the
Being
school?
polluted. And they never even told us about it. We had to contact the county. We had Phoenix Laboratories testing our well for 3 years.
Okay?
I'm talking about a 6-page report, not just a little something you
So,
stick
you
in a
know,
bottle and it'll last.
I'm not joking about this. I am very worried about this.
Nobody's joking about this. This is a
But
very
Joan,
serious
it's
issue.
not, the point is, he has somebody, they're doing this testing now that nobody knew that he was doing it right now. It's been drought, the reservoir's low, it's droughty. It's raining, yay. But you're asking questions about, is my water cloudy? Could be. How deep is my well? It's down there.
All right.
We had it pounded. We had to have, when we ran out of water, we had to have our well redug. Don't want to have to do that again.
Okay, so here's what we'll do, okay? We'll set aside this survey. I'll come up with a more valid survey. Our CAC meetings are the first Wednesday of every month. I will, if you want to ask questions or contribute,
I'm running to town board meetings. I'm running to this, ma'am.
I
And
know,
no
we
meetings
are
are up
too.
here. See, there's another problem. We all have to run down to the town hall, and and it concerns us up here. We need some of these meetings up here, where it is for us. You're making us all run to the town hall all the time. Now, I can't drive at night.
We can ask to have potentially one of the meetings here. We have to get permission from the fire district.
My
I don't think
commissioner, will they be able to have meetings?
He can't make a decision.
Request the use of the hall.
Okay, thank you.
We'll look into that.
We'll look into that, yeah.
I can tell you the majority of the boards live in West Hurley, so I don't think they would mind being here. So.
No, I'm just saying, because, it's our problem here. Yes, John.
Sure, I appreciate you.
If there's anything else, you'll hear from me.
Thank you.
You know that.
Thank you. Okay.
One quick question, John. Can you find out why they're doing that test and they didn't notify you guys?
I called and they told me they were not doing any water pumping until they had a full assessment of the monitoring, and they would not do that. They would let me know, and also they would also let the engineers know before they did any water testing.
Did you know they were doing that test, Mr. Moriello? You did not know the test was happening today? Okay. You have it on record from his attorney.
Thank you. Another good question for the survey would be, how many people live in your household and what's the potential number of people live in your household? Because there's people in this neighborhood that have 4 or 5 bedrooms and there's one person living in that household.
Oh, okay.
So what is the potential water use? And then there's also houses in this neighborhood that are Airbnb that are empty all week, that have the potential to be sold to a family that would be full all week. There's a lot of, just...
Could I ask a question here that I don't see why we're not, and it's probably a good question for you. We're talking about doing these tests. It's like right here, I see some people that have raincoats on today. But you're not going to use a raincoat every day. Some days you'll have shorts on and flip-flops. We're getting answers or test results from a one-time shot at something that history shows that the problems already exist. I don't see if there's, help me out here, if there's a legal way to just pull up the history of the school, of the people that have had dry wells, that this is an absolute problem. It might not rain tomorrow. You might not need those raincoats you have on today. But it's going to happen. It's looking ahead and saving money for the town of problems of passing things that today are okay, that we know in the past at least aren't going to be good tomorrow. There's a lot of people that come to these meetings that that take their time that they could use for other things, that are fighting teeth and everything for them to save their houses and to make them this problems not to happen. I almost, as a question, want to ask you, their attorney, to go back and say, look, it's pretty obvious. People are very, very concerned about problems that we know exist. Why do you keep pushing this town and its residents for something that they don't want? And they have reasons why they don't want it. They're legitimate reasons that are going on. Water, everything, traffic, everything that's going on. I've been to these meetings and I've seen these things too. I believe all of us that are running and have run use the term, we're public servants. We're serving all of you in what you people need and want to protect you in your lifestyles. We should not have to be coming and fighting for this stuff all the time. I would think that we could ask him to write the town people a letter explaining why he feels this is so important that he fights here. There's plenty of property.
Money.
Listen, there's plenty of money he can get other places. That where it's fit. I'm not against development if it's done smart and look into properly and ready for the future. We got to look at the future. You do a traffic, oh, traffic's fine. But what about during the summer? I'm born and raised here. I see how traffic changes, weather changes, water changes. All of these things, you're trying to pin it down to a number and a test. One time, that gives you that day. It's like a graph. You look at a graph on a certain date and you go, oh, it's 15 and 22. Well, that graph goes up and down. We have the capability of making a graph of the history and of the things that have happened. We should not all have to be doing